Good morning. So, why am I angry with Watchtower? I can't stomach watching any of the videos on jw.org, so I only catch clips of the videos on other activist sites, for which I'm most grateful, by the way. So I caught parts of the cupcake debacle, and I am so angry with Watchtower. And these are the Bible principles I would like to include in my little talk this morning. First of all, Ecclesiastes 7:16 and 17 states, do not be righteous over much. All right, it also says don't be wicked over much. But we're imperfect. We're going to make mistakes. It's no good trying to be perfect because we can't. We can't do it. So that brings us to the scribes and Pharisees who tried to be perfect by enacting all these stupid rules. Jesus said to them that they take heavy burdens, strap them onto men's shoulders, but they themselves will not lift a finger to help move them. That's in Matthew 23:4. And that's what Watchtower's done to these children. They've given these children a huge burden, sent them to school and said, look, at 6 years of age, you've got to stand on your own feet. These are things that grown men have trouble with. Peter had trouble with it. Did he lose for 1 minute God's friendship? No. When Peter denied Jesus, Jesus still loved him, and that love went through with the understanding that Peter was fearful, that it was a temporary mistake. He kept the love of Christ. Don't tell children they're going to lose God's love. That's shocking. What can Watchtower do to lift the burden on these children? Now, I'm just going to throw out a few suggestions. Let the parents go to the teacher and say, look, we don't keep birthdays. What can we do about this to let little Johnny not feel so out of it? Could he perhaps do a little task for you out of the classroom while you sing happy birthday? And if the teacher is anyway decent, then obviously he or she will say yes. And maybe the teacher will say, look, this is simply a cake day for the children. It's not anything special. We just use the birthday as an excuse. Now, here the parents might take into another principle, and that's in 1 Corinthians 8, verse 4. And this is talking about the first century custom of pagans, where they had meals in worship of their gods. And Barclay's translation here gives a little commentary on the customs of that day. And he said that the pagans would have a meal to celebrate this god, and the invitation would say something like this: I invite you to dine with me at the table of the Lord Serapis, or some other god. Well, now, obviously a Christian wouldn't go to a meal which was designed to worship a false god. However, the sacrifice to these false gods, some of the meat went to the priest, but he couldn't eat it all, so he would sell it to the meat market. So Paul is saying here to the Christians, look, go to the meat market, buy the meat, don't ask any questions. An idol, as he says in verse 4 of chapter 8, 1 Corinthians, where are we? We know that an idol stands for something which has no real existence in the order of the universe. An idol is just a piece of stone. Putting a lump of meat in front of a piece of stone doesn't change the meal, doesn't change the meat. Go and buy it from the meat market. It has nothing to do with worshipping idols, and eat it. All right, if a new believer who has a weak conscience knows that it's been offered to idols, well then you might say, all right then, well, for the sake of your weak conscience, we'll not eat this meat. But generally, what's wrong with eating it? So here too, maybe the parents could say to the teacher, well look, if it's a cake day, there's nothing stopping my child having a piece of cake. And then maybe at the end of the term, when lessons wind down anyway, the parents could ask the teacher's permission to take in a tray of brownies or something, so that little Johnny doesn't feel so different, and he has his own cake day for no particular reason, just to give a treat to the teacher and the class. Do something like that. Lift the burden on these children. Now, while I'm on a rant, there was a comment somebody put very kindly a couple of videos ago about Watchtower's Bible online that you can read on www.jw.org. And they have a summary of the book of Acts. And here it is. I don't know if you can see that at all, but the second to last one reads, in the summary Watchtower's put up, letter from the governing body in Jerusalem. That's the summary of Acts 15. But when you actually read Acts 15:22, it says this. Then the apostles and the elders, together with the whole congregation, decided to choose men to represent them. And they sent them to Antioch with Paul and Barnabas. Now, here's the comment that the whole congregation makes. In verse 28, the Holy Spirit and we have decided to lay no further burden on you except these necessary things. Rules for Christians are very limited. With no further burden. Don't put heavy burdens on 6-year-olds, expecting them to be able to do things that even the Apostle Peter couldn't do. And don't threaten them with losing God's love, because we are all imperfect. We do not lose the love of either Jesus or God. So thank you so much for putting up with me this morning. I'm sure that you'll have far better ideas than I do about lifting the burden on children. But so you might put those in the comments. Thank you so much for putting up with me this morning, and take care.